Which One? By R. Chetwynd-Hayes. The fire watcher's room was situated in the basement, and it was here that they rested between raids, which sometimes meant they never left it for the entire night. 3 double bunks stood against one wall, while in the center a table surrounded by metal folding chairs was covered by an assortment of cups, saucers, and non-matching plates. A shelf to hold gas masks and steel helmets, a wall telephone, and a row of hooks completed the furnishings. High up, under the ceiling, was an iron grid, and this gave out a low hum as the ventilation system pumped air down to this windowless den. With one exception, the men were elderly. Harold Smithers, 62, tall, black hair just touched by grey, with deep-set dark eyes that were in keeping with a pale, gaunt face and thin-lipped mouth. He was a greengrocer by trade, and a lay preacher for as much as his time and business would allow. John Hughes was a complete contrast, of medium height, plump and bald, 65 years of age, a retired civil servant who was reputed to more than like an occasional drink, and was not averse to female company. Mr. Drayton, no one had so far dared ever to omit the prefix, looked as if he might be in his late 50s, a scholar with an imposing array of letters after his name, rather above medium height, grey-haired, and cursed with a ridiculous paunch that had nothing in common with a narrow chest, scrawny neck, thin arms and legs. He was considered to be a little mad by the less sophisticated members of the team. Henry Jackson, 65, white of hair, sallow of complexion, bold-shouldered, evil-tempered, a former invoice clerk who firmly believed that fate had cheated him out of a more glorious career. The last of what must be called the seniors was a veritable giant. Charles Conway, 6 feet 6 inches in his socks, 59 years of age, not a hair on his well-shaped head, had a healthy, kindly face lit by a pair of small, twinkling eyes. He had formerly been a showroom manager for a well-known firm of furniture makers. The exception was Raymond Clark. He was only 17, a tall, blond youth, with a fresh complexion, large blue eyes that appeared to be observing the world with profound astonishment, and large, soft hands. He was training to be an architect, and hoped the war would be over before he was of age to be called up. The time was 7:32, and the date, November the 9th, in the year of our Lord, 1940. "Certain the building is empty," Smithers snapped, his position of section leader demanding he use a brusque tone of voice. "No one here but ourselves." John Hughes grimaced, and Raymond Clark demonstrated his desire to be thought mature and contemptuous of authority by imitating him. "Yes, the building is empty. Stirrup pumps are in position, sand buckets filled, and we're all fed, watered, fully clad, and in our right minds. At least I am, for God's sake, don't be an old woman." Smithers frowned, while a tinge of colour stained his pale face. "It's my job to make sure everything is as it should be. Mr. Drayton, have you signed the duty book?" Mr. Drayton looked up from a book he was reading and blinked owlishly. "What? Oh, yes. Oh, no, I haven't. Anyone got a pen?" "You should have brought a fountain pen with you," Smithers protested, "together with a notebook. You can get a nice thick one from Woolworth's for a penny." "For God's sake!" Henry Jackson exploded. "Why must we go through this palaver every night? Damnation! There's only 6 of us. We all know we're here. Question is, are we all there? Prancing about in tin hats, playing with stirrup pumps. If nothing happens by 2 o'clock, I'm going home." "It is our duty, Jackson, and we will stay here until daybreak. There's a full moon tonight, and that could mean a raid, a heavy raid. If this place goes up in flames, it will be our responsibility." "Balls! If incendiaries fall on the roof, they'll most likely burn themselves out. If there's a direct hit, there's damn all we can do about it, apart from sit here and wait for someone to dig us out, always supposing we aren't flattened." "You forget," Smithers admonished, "that there's one who watches over us. So as long as we put our trust in him, all will be well." Jackson snorted derisively. "The perpetual optimist. Use your intelligence, man. At this moment, people are dying violently all over the world, and he isn't doing much about it." Smithers was about to protest when Mr. Drayton said quietly, "I have formed a philosophy I would advise you to follow. So long as this war continues, look upon yourselves as already dead. Then, every day you find yourself still breathing is an unmerited bonus." An uncomfortable silence followed this statement that from a less distinguished source might have been treated with derision. I have no wish to question anyone's beliefs, but in these times a wise man must consider the possibility of an abrupt ending. If that does not bother you, forget what I said. But for those who walk with fear, grinning over their shoulders, my solution is as good as any." Smithers clearly thought that this was an ideal opportunity to deliver a declaration of faith, and proceeded to do so. "A Christian has no fear of death, as he knows it is only a doorway to paradise, a place of eternal bliss." "Just a moment," Jackson interrupted. "If this place is so good, what are you hanging about for? Are we to understand that you're looking forward to dying?" "Well, that's a stupid question. Of course I want to live as long as possible. It would be a mortal sin to wish otherwise. No, what I intended to imply was—" His voice died away as the moaning wail of the air raid siren sent its warning out over the city, and every man jerked his head to one side as though having difficulty in hearing the depressing sound. Smithers at once became a man of action, a general who must now deploy his army to withstand the enemy's onslaught. "Right, lads," he spoke with a forced, hearty tone. "You know what to do. Gas masks and helmets on, then to your posts. Young Raymond, you will man the telephone. Come on now, best foot forward." Jackson, of course, had to be contrary, and undermine Smithers' far from certain confidence with sneering remarks. "Don't panic. It can be anything up to 10 minutes between the sirens sounding and the arrival of the first planes. Then the damn things have got to find us, which in all probability they never will, so calm down and stop prancing about like a fussy old hen." "Look, Jackson, I've had enough of you. You're a damned—" "Naughty? What would the God Box meetings say? A damned disturbing influence. I wonder why you take the trouble to come here, if this is the only attitude you can take." Jackson began leisurely to slide the gas mask strap over his head, an example that Raymond imitated. "That's a question I often ask myself, probably because watching you getting hot and bothered is better than a tonic. Breaks the bloody monotony." "I don't get hot and bothered." "Please, gentlemen," Mr. Drayton's quiet voice cut him short. "This continuous bickering is not conducive to peace of mind, which all of us badly need in these trying times. Might I suggest that if you can't address one another in a civilized manner, you declare a non-speaking truce?" "But he started it," Smithers protested. "He always does. Everybody knows that." Mr. Drayton sighed deeply. "Shall we get ready and take up our positions? Unless I am mistaken, enemy planes are already overhead." As though to prove the truth of his words, a distant explosion, followed by the intermittent roar of ack-ack guns, filtered down through the building. The 5 men began to file out into the dimly lit passage and make their way towards the flight of stone steps that ran up to the ground floor. Raymond Clark was watching them from the doorway, being perhaps not too happy about being left on his own. Smithers had reached the top of the steps and was about to open the iron door when Jackson said, "Damnation! I've left my gloves behind. I'll have to go back for them." "No, you don't," Smithers objected. "We haven't time to waste." He raised his voice. "Raymond, bring Mr. Jackson's gloves, as I remember they're lying on the shelf." The boy went back into the room and reappeared a few seconds later, carrying a pair of wash-leather gloves. He ran towards the steps and had mounted the first 3 when a faint whistling sound gradually came into being, quickly growing in volume, as if the entire planet was screaming in unbearable agony. There was a mad dash to get back down the stairs, and they became a straggling mass of arms and legs as the shrieking whistle suddenly died and was replaced by what sounded like a long, drawn-out, gusty sigh. When the explosion came, every single mind was filled with one irrevocable belief. Whatever happens to the others, I cannot die. The left-hand wall caved in, covering 6 squirming bodies with masonry, bricks, and a cloud of choking dust. The roaring crash took a lifetime to die, went shuddering across the universe before being swallowed by a dreadful silence. A hideous mountain of rubble covered the stairs and sloped down onto an irregular carpet of bricks and plaster that hid about 3/4 of the passage floor. Presently, a dislodged brick came tumbling downwards, to be shortly followed by a veritable avalanche, as Conway reared up from the steps, looking like a mythical giant born from the ruins of Olympus. He began frantically to search among the rubble, throwing aside great lumps of masonry with apparent ease, pulling up a plaster-covered body that instantly started to cough and splutter before joining in the rescue operation. Others struggled upright without any assistance and picked their way through the wreckage, drawn back to the room where a light still created an illusion of normality. One by one, they came in through the doorway and flopped into chairs, all bedraggled, coated with dust, but apparently unharmed. Conway was the first to speak. "We're all here, then? All made it? Christ, I thought my time had come." Smithers wiped dust from his lips on the back of his torn coat sleeve. "God save us! I said a prayer when I heard that coming, and he must have heard me." "Pity he didn't turn the bloody thing round and send it back to where he came from," Jackson retorted. "The question is, where do we go from here?" Smithers was so far recovered as to reassume his air of authority. "The bomb must have glanced off the outer wall, but the hole is blocked by a fall from higher up. Sooner or later the ARP boys will dig us out." Mr. Drayton spoke with his usual quiet voice. "Gentlemen, we must face facts. The raid is still going on, and I think it must be an extremely heavy one. It is quite possible that no rescue bid will be made until daybreak, if not later. In the meantime, it may have escaped your notice that the ventilation system is no longer working. Air may be coming down to us through the ruins, but I wouldn't count on it." Young Clark began to sob, and Smithers patted him awkwardly on the shoulder while trying to appear unconcerned. "Don't worry, lad, we'll manage somehow. Having been spared from the blast, it is inconceivable that we should suffocate." "Might be inconceivable," John Hughes commented dryly. "But it is quite possible. Can't you stop that boy snivelling? There are no worse things than him for the rest of us." "I can't agree," Mr. Drayton said firmly. "The situation is far worse for him. Most of us have 10 years left at the very best. He might be good for another 70. He has every right to mourn." "Damn that for a tale," Jackson protested. "I intend to hang on to whatever time is left to me. Smithers, I propose we start shifting some of that rubble and try to get through the side wall." "My very thought," Smithers said heartily. "If we get properly organised, we might be able to break through in no time. What do you say, Mr. Drayton?" "Well, it will certainly keep us occupied, and may well be successful. But we will have to move with extreme care, or the whole lot will be down on top of us." "Right. Yes," said Smithers. He rubbed his hands and simulated enthusiasm. "Let's get cracking. Come on, Raymond, stir yourself, lad. Take my box of matches and light all the hurricane lamps. Jackson, you have a shot at trying to raise someone on the telephone. You got some bloody hopes. You never know. Electricity is still coming through, so the phone may still be working." Raymond, still emitting an occasional sob, knelt down and took 6 hurricane lamps from under the table, then arrayed them on the surface. He raised each glass globe, but due to his shaking hands, made such a job in lighting the first one, Hughes snatched the matches from him. "Damnation, boy, hell, I'll take over. If you ever get you in the army, God help England. You must be Hitler's secret weapon." "I can't help it, Mr. Hughes. I'm shaking all over." Mr. Drayton came over and placed an arm around the boy's shoulders. "Lay down, lad. You're suffering from shock. Wrap yourself in blankets and keep warm. There's enough of us here to do what can be done without your help." He assisted the boy to climb into a lower bunk, then piled blankets over and around him, but looked up when Jackson's voice began to speak into the telephone. "Hello. This is the fire-watching post at Mansfield and Hedges. Listen, will you? We're trapped in the basement. For God's sake, let me get a word in. Hello? Hello?" "What's the trouble?" Smithers asked. "Have you got someone?" Jackson put his hand over the mouthpiece. "There's some girl on the other end who keeps asking me if there's anyone there. It seems I can hear her, but she can't hear me." Smithers grabbed the receiver from the man's hand and glued it to his ear. "Hello, this is the fire-watching... hello? Hello, can you hear... Hello, can you hear me?" He slowly replaced the receiver on its hook and turned to face the room. "Oh, it's no use. The line went dead. Never mind. We'll try again later. Well, come on, let's get to work." They filed out into the passage, 4 carrying a lamp each, Smithers carrying 2. On arrival at a position where the first step might be hidden under the rubble, they all placed their lanterns in a rough half-circle and stared helplessly at the rugged pile that sloped up before them. "Bloody hopeless," Conway complained. "Start mucking about with that lot and we'll have it crashing down on top of us." "None of that talk," Smithers admonished. "We must climb some way up and start clearing the stairs, then work our way outwards." "Do be careful of live wiring," Mr. Drayton warned, "and concealed holes." They began to clamber upwards, silent now, for the close atmosphere was tainted with the stench of burnt cordite that reactivated the memory of the dreadful moments before the bomb struck. But everyone worked with will, and they were presently rewarded by seeing 6 steps cleared and the beginning of a small cavity in the ruined left wall. Jackson wiped sweat from his brow and expressed a typically pessimistic opinion. "There's no hope of getting through that lot. The slightest movement will bring down the ceiling and whatever is above it on top of us." "But we must try," Smithers pleaded. "We can't give up now." Jackson shrugged. "Please yourself. Don't say I haven't warned you." Each stone was removed with elaborate care, everyone jumping back when an ominous rumble announced the great pile was moving, and made no objection when Mr. Drayton took up a lamp and eased himself into the cavity that their work had created. He jerked his head round and looked back over one shoulder, his eyes glittering through the film of dust that covered his face. "There's a body in here." This information was received and digested in almost total silence, that was only broken when Smithers whispered, "A body? Are you sure? I mean, How could there be? Mr. Drayton backed out of the hole and handed the greengrocer his lantern. See for yourself. All 4 men crowded round the entrance and looked down upon that which had been uncovered. Projecting out of an agglomeration of bricks, broken masonry, and plaster was a pair of blackened human legs. The upper part of the body is probably flattened, Mr. Drayton said in a matter-of-fact tone of voice, was crushed when the wall fell inwards. "But who the hell is it?" Jackson demanded. "Someone standing by the wall outside when the bomb fell?" Mr. Drayton shook his head. Impossible. Such a person would have been blown to bits, got the full blast. No, he must have been on the inside, on the stairs. Jackson pushed his way forward and stared down at the legs, his face screwed up in an expression of complete horror. "What the hell are you talking about, man? There was only us on the stairs. There couldn't have been anyone else." "Well, I would be extremely grateful if you can supply a more logical answer. The fact cannot be ignored that there is a body lying on our side of the wall, and, so far as I am concerned, no way of explaining how it got there." Smithers bent over and, after some hesitation, touched one leg. He straightened up and creased his face into a wry grimace. "Still warm. Maybe he fell from above." "The ceiling is still intact," Mr. Drayton pointed out, "so he can't have come from that direction. Look, I suggest we return to the rest room to give this matter our full consideration." "Well, I'm all for packing it in," Jackson said, "but I'll be damned if I can see what there is to consider. Some poor devil has been given his quitting papers, and how he got there is by the way. I'm much more interested in how we are going to get out." "Nevertheless, I think we should discuss the matter." They went back to the lighted room, where Mr. Drayton peered down at Raymond, and noticed with some relief that the boy was sleeping and was no longer shaking. He walked over to the table and sank down upon a chair, seemingly unaware of his companion's curious stares, but jerking his head round when Jackson said, "I'm going to try that telephone again. Maybe whatever's wrong with it has been put right." Mr. Drayton watched him with a strange intensity when he raised the receiver and began to speak into the mouthpiece. "Hello? Hello? Oh, damn!" He looked fearfully upwards when another explosion seemed to shake the building, and a shimmering cloud of plaster fell from the ceiling. He replaced the receiver and raised his shoulders as a helpless gesture. "Not a dicky bird. Guess the exchange has been hit. Perhaps we're in the best place after all," Smithers suggested. "The air doesn't seem to have gotten any worse. I wonder if the water is still on in the washroom. I'd feel better if I could remove some of this muck." Neither he nor anyone else made a move to investigate. When Mr. Drayton raised his voice, every face took on a look of faint disgust, as though he were about to relate an obscene story that no one wanted to hear, but common politeness demanded they listen. "There's just one point I would like to clear up. Smithers, you were at the top of the stairs. Did you have the door open?" Smithers shook his head. "No, I had my hand on the handle, but the moment I heard the whistling shriek I let go and tumbled down the stairs with the rest of you." "That's what I thought. I suppose there's no way the door could have been blown open, then closed again before the wall collapsed. I was thinking that if someone had been sheltering in the upper passage, they might have sort of been blown in." "Most improbable," Hughes objected. "I mean, if the door was opened by the blast, debris would have kept it open." "I have arrived at the stage," Mr. Drayton stated, "where the possible must be discarded and the improbable considered. Having confirmed that the door could not have been opened, that there was no one on the stairs except ourselves, I am reluctantly, very reluctantly drawn to only one conclusion." He paused, and switched his gaze from one face to another, then expelled his breath as a deep sigh before continuing. "Gentlemen, I am going to ask you to consider the possibility that one of us is dead." The stunned silence lasted for a full minute, then was shattered by a united chorus of protests that flowed from gaping mouths and threatened to smother the tiny bud that was trying to unfold on the many-branched tree of knowledge. Mr. Drayton closed his eyes and waited with weary impatience for the storm to subside. Presently, there was only Jackson shouting his disbelief, his fear-tinted anger. "I always thought you were potty, Drayton, a bloody crank, out of touch with reality. But by God, you've gone too far this time. Maybe all this has really sent you round the bend, but then give me another, more sane explanation," Mr. Drayton interrupted. "You can't. None of you can. Believe me, I would have kept this diagnosis to myself. But whoever it is that has left his earthly body back there on the stairs must be made to realize his position. If we ignore what has happened, he could well be trapped here for centuries." Smithers leaned over the table and spoke softly, rather as a parent might do to a backward child. "Look, old man, we're still alive. Bit battered, maybe, grimy, shocked, and not a little frightened. But we are alive and breathing, nothing ghostly about any of us. Now why don't you have a nice lie down, eh? Take a nap. Come morning, the rescue squad will dig us out, and we can have a laugh about this over a few jars." Mr. Drayton forced himself into an upright position, and when he spoke, his voice had taken on a commanding tone, suggesting that his usual indifferent mien was only a carefully prepared mask. "Now you listen to me, and let no one interrupt until I have finished. What I believe has happened here is by no means unique. There are many well-authenticated cases of people who were afterwards proved to be dead at the time of their appearance, walking into their homes, places of employment, behaving exactly as they had during life." Jackson sneered. "I would want concrete proof before I believed a word of it." "There is a distinct possibility that you will have all the proof you need," Mr. Drayton retorted grimly. "Consider the fact that it is you lying out there. That's the horrible part of the entire business, you see. Whoever it is does not know he is dead." Conway spoke with his accustomed, slow tone of voice. "Mr. Drayton, just suppose you're right. How can you explain why a dead man should walk around with a normal body when the one he has been born with is lying under several tons of bricks?" "I will try to answer that as best I can. It is quite possible that we all have two bodies, one of dense material that we use in this life, and the other that, for want of a better description, is comprised of higher vibrating atoms. Normally, at death, that speck of consciousness we call the soul is gradually eased into the secondary body and can ascend to the next plane of existence with no trouble at all. But when there is a violent death, shock can result in an unnatural phenomenon. These vibrations can be slowed down, and, in rare cases, exactly match those of the defunct body." Conway shifted his giant form, then scratched his head. "Hold on a moment. I can quite well see that if that is the case, the poor bleeder doesn't know he's dead. But how long does he carry on like this?" "Usually for a short while," Mr. Drayton replied, "but we are in unusual circumstances, shut away from normal life, all of us in close proximity with each other, all unconsciously feeding the undead, that is the only word I can think of, with crude materialistic essence. I'd say if we can't settle this problem beforehand, Devibrating won't start until someone enters from outside this room. What happens when he devibrates? The secondary body will become invisible, but will still be here, become what is commonly called a ghost, that can be seen by certain people when the conditions are favorable. Smithers, Hughes, and Conway appeared to be toying with the possibility that this bizarre theorizing might have a basis in fact, and they were eyeing each other with growing suspicion, but Jackson still maintained his facade of angry disbelief and ejected shrill defiance. "Balls! Balderdash! All of you must be mad just to listen to him. When you're dead, you're dead. Finished. Do you fully understand what he's saying? One of us is a bloody ghost. I mean, honestly, think about that. You, Conway, all 16 stone of you, according to Mr. Drayton, could be a spook. Or you, Smithers, far cry from your night-gowned, harp-playing, angel-winged paradise, eh? What about young Raymond there? He's snoring like a pig. I suppose you haven't ruled him out." "As a matter of fact," Mr. Drayton said quietly, "at the moment, you are my number one suspect." "I'm what?" "That might be why you could hear the girl on the telephone, but she couldn't hear you. This is a local affair, figuratively speaking. You wouldn't exist outside of this shelter." Jackson clamped his fingers to his right wrist, then gave vent to a cry of triumph. "Ha! There! My pulse is beating 13 to the dozen. I'm solid, warm, with blood streaming through my veins. If I was to hit you, you'd feel my fist. How the hell can I be dead?" Mr. Drayton sighed deeply and suddenly looked old and tired. "I've explained that. Lower vibrations would make your astral body temporarily an exact duplicate of your dead one. In any case, it may not be you. The reason the exchange could not hear your voice might well be due to some technical fault. But until more convincing evidence turns up, you must be suspect." Jackson turned to Conway and tried to lay his hand on the big man's arm, but that worthy shrank back and shook his head wildly. "No, if you don't mind. I mean, if you're what Mr. Drayton says you might be, well, it might be catching or something." Suddenly, Jackson was merely a terrified elderly man, his normally arrogant voice transformed into a hoarse, pleading whisper. "I'm not dead. I'm not. If there's any truth in all this, it must be one of you, Smithers. You were higher up on the stairs than the rest of us. I'll bet it's you. Yeah, come to think of it, you've been acting strangely since we came back down here. Admit it, man. You must know." Smithers began to tremble, his hands jerking from side to side on the table, as though they had suddenly been endowed with some kind of independent life. His eyes dilated as he spoke. No, it can't be me. I did not lose consciousness for a single second. I'm bruised all over. Wait a minute. Conway, you were up first, full of energy, and so far as I can see, not a scratch on you. It must be you." Conway permitted himself a tiny smile and shook his head gently. "No, if that's my body out there, then my legs must have shrunk. Mine are like tree trunks, right, Mr. Drayton?" The calm man seated at the opposite end of the table nodded gravely. "That point had not escaped me. Yes, you are in the clear. That reduces the number of suspects down to 5. Some small progress, gentlemen." "With Jackson leading the field," Conway commented, almost cheerfully. "Hold on!" Jackson waved a shaking forefinger. "Those legs might be too small for Conway's, but they're too large for mine." He turned quickly in his chair and began to roll up his trouser legs. "Look, mine are thin and veined. That rules me out." "Well, mine are fattish," Smithers said, and was about to roll up his trouser leg, but for some reason decided against such an undignified action. "As I remember, those out there are most certainly on the thin side. Sweet Saviour, they can't be mine." We could, of course. Conway, who, due to possibly being the only one completely free from suspicion, was now inclined to be facetious, suggested, "Go back up the stairs and have a leg show. See which pair match." "Gentlemen," Mr. Drayton's quiet voice made them all turn and regard him with some hope born from desperation. "This kind of behaviour is getting us nowhere. Earlier I advised you to regard yourselves as already dead. Now I am suggesting you do just that, literally. Let us all say I am the one. Accept that you are a dead man, still functioning among 5 live ones. Then whoever it is will be free." "Free to do what?" Hughes asked. "Free to leave this place." "To go where? I mean, to say that's the rub, isn't it? To jump into the unknown. Speaking for myself, I would rather remain here." Mr. Drayton frowned and appeared to be considering the advisability of answering this question. But a sudden interruption spared him the need to make a decision. Raymond Clark sat up, rubbed his eyes, then slid from the bunk. He walked unsteadily across the room, and after seating himself, said, in a tremulous voice, "I feel funny, all woozy. Any chance of a cup of tea?" Jackson laughed shortly. "You've got some hope. Can't see why you should feel funny. You've been sleeping your bloody head off, while the rest of us have been sweating blood." "Sleep well, lad?" Mr. Drayton asked. Raymond scratched his head and looked very young and vulnerable. "I guess so, but I had a strange dream. Somehow I'd got out of here and was walking down Canbury Street. Bombs were falling everywhere, but they didn't seem to bother me. It was as though I knew they couldn't hurt me. Then I came to the ARP post and went down the steps into the basement, and there were several men seated round a table, including Mr. Sinclair, who is in charge of our office. When I tried to explain what had happened here, he ignored me." Mr. Drayton was watching the boy through narrowed eyes. "You're suffering from shock and influenced by what had just taken place. Do you remember anything else?" Raymond nodded. "Yes, but it was so, mad. I don't know if I want to tell you about it." "It might help if you did," Mr. Drayton said softly. "Sort of get it off your mind. Do you remember leaving the ARP post?" "No. Suddenly I wanted to be back here with all of you. Then I was just outside looking at a great pile of rubble that completely hides the entrance. There was a man waiting." He stopped talking and wiped his dirt-grimed forehead, a strange flickering glitter momentarily turning his eyes into pools of fire, causing Mr. Drayton to draw in his breath. "Can you describe this man?" he asked gently. "I think so. Although he was like no one I'd ever seen before. I had the impression he was dressed in black, a kind of long robe. But it was his face that demanded my full attention. So white, it almost shone, and the eyes were large and very dark, and bright with, pity, intelligence, knowledge, I don't know, perhaps all three. Then he said, only I don't think he actually said anything. I think I just heard the words in me head. 'Don't go back in there. You belong in another place.'" Jackson exclaimed, "Oh, my God, my God!" And they all shrank back, staring at the boy with terror-bright eyes. Only Mr. Drayton did not move or in any way display the slightest sign that he was perturbed, surprised, or even relieved. He just asked, "Doubtlessly you have no reason to believe that the experience is anything more than a particularly vivid dream?" Raymond looked at him with some surprise. "Well, of course not. What else could it be?" What indeed? I must tell you that there is a body half buried under the ruins of the outer wall, and there is no way its presence can be explained unless it is one of ours. Raymond looked unhappily from one face to another, then, for no particular reason, began to examine his large hands. Mr. Drayton noticed they were surprisingly clean. I don't understand. There's no one missing. Is this some kind of joke? Not of our making, lad, Jackson said harshly. But if you're the one, then I'll laugh as heartily as the next man. Mr. Drayton raised his voice and displayed more emotion than might have been thought possible from his normal demeanour. There is no need to jump to conclusions. He could merely have experienced a nightmare, the result of our earlier conversation and the ensuing experience. Remember, we were discussing death when the siren sounded. Whoever walks from this place alive may well have some very vivid dreams. Smithers shook his head violently from side to side, while saliva dribbled down his lower lips and formed two little rivulets on either side of his chin. He thumped the table with clenched fists. Either someone is dead or you're mad, Drayton. And who else could it be but sinful youth, that neither heaven nor hell will accept? He raised a shaking forefinger and pointed it at the terrified youth. Look at him. He belongs to the dead. If there is any doubt, then put pay to him right here and now. Mr. Drayton folded his arms and assumed a scornful smile, but the other three men stared uncomprehendingly at Smithers, then switched their gaze to Raymond. John Hughes frowned and said, Hell, there's no need for any of us to go overboard. I can't believe you mean that. Hell, none of us here are murderers. Murder? Who's talking about murder? You can't murder anyone who is already dead. Only help him on his way. And suppose he is not the one? Mr. Drayton asked. It's by no means certain. You heard him. Did you say people had been walking around while their bodies slept? Well, his soul must have been loose while his astral body slept. It stands to reason. This damned business is getting madder by the second, Hughes protested. Conway got up and flexed his great muscles, an action that made Raymond shrink back and emit a startled cry. We'll settle this matter once and for all. Do what should have been done in the first place. Dig that damned body out and try to find out who it belongs to. There must be something that will identify it, clothing size, some distinguishing mark. Who'll give me a hand? But it's flattened from the waist up, Hughes protested. And if anyone starts mucking about with that rubble, the whole lot will come down. Well, I'd rather be flattened myself than take much more of this. When I hear a holy Moses like Smithers talk about murder, it's about time something positive was done. Damnation! Hell, we'll all be raving mad before they dig us out if this goes on. Well, count me in, Hughes said. I don't like it, but I agree we must know. And I shall come along as well. Mr. Drayton rose slowly to his feet. Let me say this. If it turns out to be a stranger, no one will be more relieved than me. I'm staying here, Smithers stated. I know who it is, and I don't intend to risk my neck in proving the obvious. Well, that being the case, Mr. Drayton said softly, Raymond had better come along with us. Smithers, take it easy, man. Try to get some sleep. Again there was a violent shaking of the head, a pounding of fists on the table, but now the voice had acquired a shrill tone. Not sleep. Sleep is a thief that opens and locks doors and lets loose the hounds of hell. I will never sleep again. Mr. Drayton ignored the outburst and automatically took charge of the operation. We'll need something to prop up the hole as we work inwards. I think the table will be useful. Also the doors of this room and the latrines. Conway, you are the strongest here. How about dismantling them? You can use the axe from the firefighting apparatus." The big man nodded. "Fine. Come to think of it, there's several spare shovels in the store cupboard. Can the rest of you arrange the lamps on the stairs so we can see what we're doing?" With the prospect of having something to do, a kind of artificial gaiety sprang into being between the four men and the boy. The table was carried into the passage, where Conway soon reduced it to several stout planks, which in turn were transported up the stairs and piled close to the cavity. But when the lamps had been arranged in such a way as to illuminate the interior, every voice seemed incapable of speaking above a whisper, and a glaze of fear dulled every eye. "Our first job," Mr. Drayton instructed, "is to shore up the opening, then we will set about enlarging it." Conway did most of the work, and even he was careful not to look downwards, but concentrated his full attention on the upper half of the cavity, maintaining that it was here that the danger lay. Presently the door and planks transformed the whole into the likeness of a backless cupboard, and it was reasonably safe to shift some of the larger stones, even to remove the increasing pile of dust that covered two black, unidentified legs that no one wanted to see. Mr. Drayton pushed Conway gently to one side, taking up a lamp, sank to his knees. He crawled forward, trying to ignore the stench of cordite, dust, and corruption, his eyes alert for the slightest sign that would solve the enigma. He called back over one shoulder, "There's a sponge in the washroom, and some water in one of the basins. Soak it well, and bring it to me here. Yes, and a dry towel if you can find such a thing." While waiting for these requirements, Mr. Drayton began to brush dust away from the grisly remains, while toying with the grim possibility that they might be his own. When Hughes handed him a sopping sponge and a torn-off length of roller towel, he washed one leg, only to discover it made little difference to the colour. He could only assume that an instant and violent death had resulted in the blood congealing under the skin. There were also signs of decomposition and an unpleasant sagging of the flesh, a sheen of moisture that no amount of rubbing could erase, plus the by now stomach-heaving stench. He sighed and stood up. "There's no help for it. We'll have to shift some more of the stuff, and hope to hell there'll be some recognizable clothing or something, but I warn you it will be a pretty grim job." No one answered or displayed any marked enthusiasm to render assistance, and it was not until Drayton had all but crushed his foot with a mishandled stone that Conway muttered, "Here, let me in," and squeezed his way into the hole. He backed out with a large lump of masonry clasped to his chest, then, having flung this down the steps, set to with a shovel, enlarging the opening with complete disregard for his own safety. He came out for the last time and stood looking down at Mr. Drayton. "I've done all I'm going to do," he said harshly. "There's nothing wrong with my muscles, but my stomach's not all that strong." John Hughes, with more courage than wisdom, poked his head into the entrance, then quickly withdrew it, and gave the impression he would be violently sick if given the slightest encouragement. Jackson permitted himself one quick glance before ejaculating, "Oh, no, that's enough for me. I don't want nothing to do with this." "But it might be you," Mr. Drayton pointed out. "That's bloody obscene. I refuse to believe that mess has got anything to do with me." Raymond Clark remained flattened against the wall and did not say anything. "But someone has to go in there and sort through the bits and pieces," Mr. Drayton said brutally. "There's got to be a clue. Flesh and bones can be crushed, clothes soaked with blood, but some personal effects may still be reasonably intact. A ring, wallet, letters. We are standing a few yards away from the solution of a problem that must be unique. Conway, you started this investigation. Why not complete it?" The big man shook his head. "No way. I've done the donkey work. Now let someone else solve the puzzle. You, Mr. Drayton, you're the strongest man here. I'm not talking about muscles, but whatever it is that keeps us going. There's iron in you, and fire that's kept well damped down. I doubt if it's you in there, because you'd know if you were dead. You're ready for it, probably eager to be on your way. So get stuck in, Mr. Drayton, up to your flaming elbows." Mr. Drayton nodded, slowly, as though he had already solved a problem that had been bothering him for some time. Then he spoke quietly, pronouncing each word with cold precision. "Very well, I will do what must be done, trusting I have the strength you so kindly attribute to me. But every one of you must be prepared. Accept my word that the man I will name is the one. Know for an indisputable fact that you are dead, and have no right to be in this place. Should, contrary to your flattering opinion, Conway, the body be mine, I will not linger, that much I can promise. I will need a shovel and 2 lanterns." He went into the opening, placed a lamp on either side, then began to scrape dust and embedded lumps of plaster from the flattened torso. It was a dreadful sight. Splintered bone protruded from a congealed mass of blood and mangled flesh. Only the legs from thigh-top downwards remained intact. Mr. Drayton pushed the tip of his shovel up over the faintly recognizable shape of the spinal column, raising tiny shreds of blood-soaked clothing that defied recognition. Then he drove the shovel down into the loose rubble on the left side and levered the corpse up and over onto one side, thereby exposing what lay beneath, a soggy bundle that measured some 4 inches wide by 6 long. Mr. Drayton took out his pocket handkerchief and, after wrapping it around his right hand, reached down and picked up that which had been uncovered. He turned back the stained leather cover and saw the title page, that although blood-soaked on 3 sides, was all but unmarked in the center. He read the bold black letters with ease, then turned his attention to the inscription that had been written by hand with blue ink. He sighed deeply and was about to back out onto the stairs when a rumbling roar, followed by an avalanche of falling bricks, covered the corpse completely and uncovered another portion of the ruined wall. "You all right?" Conway asked, after he had pulled Mr. Drayton out of the dust-filled hole. "When we heard that crash, we thought you'd had it." "I'm all right," Mr. Drayton replied. "The fall was way back. I suppose the wooden props saved me." Jackson shook his head with fearful impatience and asked the vital question. "What did you find? Do you know who it is?" "I know whose body lies in there. Under it I found this." Mr. Drayton held out the small volume that he still gripped in his handkerchief-wrapped hand. "It is a pocket edition of Pilgrim's Progress. On the inside of the front cover is inscribed, 'To Harold Smithers,' from his good friend Arthur Brown." For a while they all appeared to be locked in a dimension of frozen time, as though no one wanted to advance into the next second where the truth was waiting with an unveiled face. Then the voice of Smithers shattered the silence, came roaring up from the room below, echoing along the endless corridors of eternity. "In the name of God and all his angels, what have you found? Do you know who it is?" Jackson spun round and seemed on the point of doing a little dance of joy as he shouted back, "It's you, Smithers! You're dead! You're dead, man! Dead! Dead! And now, merciful God, I'm alive!" The long, drawn-out scream came shuddering across time and space, made those that remained cover their ears, go down on trembling knees, and pray for the blessed gift of silence. The scream sank down into a bubbling moan that gradually emerged into babbling words. "Oh, may I be forgiven! I did not believe." 4 men and a boy crept down the stairs and advanced very slowly towards the room where the dead, pleaded for clemency, while from behind them, high up, came the sound of a wielded pickaxe. The wailing voice died when the first man, Jackson, passed through the open doorway, was instantly smothered by the mists of oblivion, to exist only in the realms of deceptive memory. Jackson looked in at the bunks, at the scattered chairs, then voiced his horrified astonishment. "He's not here! He's not here! Gone!" "That was to be expected," Mr. Drayton observed quietly. He at last knew and accepted. There was no way he could remain after that. Let us hope he went in the right direction. Hughes spoke in a hushed tone. "Maybe as time passes, we'll try to believe that none of this happened. Pretend we were all suffering from shock, illusions, and perhaps that will be for the best. Madness is born from knowledge like this. But I, for one, will treasure life as never before. Every breath I take will be an undeserved bonus. Every sunrise a precious revelation. There may be a paradise waiting for us, but let me enjoy this hell for as long as I can." "Too high flown for me," Jackson said, "but I agree with the sentiment. Drayton, I'm not sure if I ever want to see your face again. It'll probably stop me from sleeping at nights." Mr. Drayton did not answer, but stood perfectly still, staring intently at the floor. Conway patted Raymond Clark on the shoulder. "Well, lad, it's all over. Sounds as if they're digging away up there. That means you'll soon be home, getting yourself wrapped around your powdered egg and tinned bacon. How do you feel about that, then?" Raymond wiped his eyes on the back of his hand. "Fine, I guess, but are you sure it's all over? I still feel funny." "Bound to. We all feel funny. Wonder we're not crawling around on all fours. You must forget about this. Take Mr. Hughes's advice. Pretend none of it happened." The sound of digging was now much louder, and was soon intermingling with a crash of falling rubble, while a cloud of dust drifted along the passage and in through the doorway. Jackson expressed his satisfaction. 10 minutes, more or less, should find them down here. I bet they'll be surprised to find any of us alive. I suppose there's no point in us giving them a hand." Mr. Drayton spoke for the second time since entering the room. He raised his head and switched his sad gaze from face to face. "I fear there's no point at all." "You mean we'll be more hindrance than help?" Hughes suggested. "No, I do not mean that. Gentlemen, I have to tell you." He stopped and took a deep breath before continuing. "When I was in the hole, you may remember there was a fall of rubble. It uncovered another section of the wall. It also revealed 4 more bodies." Hughes frowned and repeated, 4 more bodies? And Conway drew nearer to the boy as if to protect him from a new danger. Only Jackson moved forward until he was within a few inches of the sad-faced man and stared up into his eyes. "So there are 4 more bodies. There's been a damned air raid. There must be quite a few bodies lying around." "Please," Mr. Drayton pleaded, "don't make me spell it out. You know." Jackson clamped his hands over his ears and shouted, "I'm not going to listen. You're stark raving mad. We've humoured you over Smithers, but this is too much." Hughes said, "I don't understand. What in God's name are you talking about?" "He's suggesting," Jackson turned and spat the words out, "that we've all been playing the wrong game. Not who is the ghost, But who is the live one? And the answer is himself, right, Drayton? Never mind me, Mr. Drayton pleaded. Just believe. Accept your condition and go. Go before they break through. Don't get trapped down here and be forced to haunt this place for centuries. A resounding crash came from the end of the passage, and a voice could be heard exclaiming, "Not much hope of finding anyone here alive, Harry. The bloody wall must have crashed down on all of them." "I was saved by a fluke," Mr. Drayton explained. "You all fell on top of me. Then the blast lifted you off again. Afterwards, I wanted to forget." Raymond Clark cried out and pointed to the open doorway. "That man, the one in my dream, he's out there beckoning. Please don't make me go. Please." Scarcely had he uttered the last word when the overhead light began to flicker, then gradually dimmed down to a dull red glow before dying completely. Mr. Drayton stood in total darkness and tried to detect other sounds than those which came from the top of the stairs, but there was only the wild beating of his heart, the shuffle of his feet when he moved towards the doorway. A bright circle of light came dancing down the steps, and behind it a line of dim figures that descended out of the surrounding darkness. More torches were switched on when Mr. Drayton was spotted standing in the doorway, and a disembodied voice asked, "You the only one left alive, mate?" "I think so," he replied with a tremulous voice. "Merciful God, I think so."